Hello, everybody. Welcome to Small Biz Buzz. This is Ducey Van Dusen, and I'm joined by our always host, Crystal. Crystal, how's it going? Yeah.
Hi. Good. I was just saying I'm a little out of practice, so I'm excited to be talking today. It's like the best part of my week is typically just chatting with everyone.
Yeah. It's nice to see some faces, and I'm normally just kind of heads down editing videos kind of stuff. So it's good to have a good conversation with everybody here. So Crystal, we've got some guests that you've lined up for us. You want to introduce them for us?
Yes, I'm really excited. Today we have Melody, Lewis, and Turquoise. What's your last name? How do
Devereaux.
Devereaux, thank you. And they are from the IndigenousCC. So we're really looking forward to chatting with you ladies. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that I think is really important these days, which is why is it important to have diversity in your business? So can you guys share a little bit more about your company and how you guys started your bond and your partnership? And then we'll dive in.
So my name is Melody Lewis. I am from the Fort Mojave Indian Reservation, located in Mojave Valley, Arizona, a small town about 4 hours from here. And I am the co-founder for Indigenous Community Collaborative, also known as IndigenousCC. And so basically what we do is to revitalize the Indigenous perspective within workforce and education. And I am the workforce side. So basically workforce development is everything into how do I get talent development, talent acquisition, all of that good stuff. But primarily, again, for Indigenous communities or for companies or outside non-tribal entities to work with tribal communities. So that's what I do.
So my name is Turquoise Devereaux. I am Salish and Blackfeet. I'm actually from Montana. So I grew up in Western Montana on the Flathead Indian Reservation. And so that's where I came. I've been in Phoenix now for 2 years. And so I am also the co-founder for IndigenousCC. So I'm the academic side, the education side. So a lot of what I've done in my career is I do a lot of consulting and working with institutions, doing institutional reform, curriculum development, on what I call creating culturally safe spaces for Native populations to have equal access to education. And so Mel and I, we met a short 2 years ago, which is amazing though, because instantly we found out our passions truly aligned, and but it comes from two different systems. But we collaborated now in doing what we do with IndigenousCC. So really, yeah, like Mel was saying, we do some youth development as well, of teaching tribal youth, Indigenous youth, how to navigate these systems to be successful in education and workforce. And then we serve tribal communities in, not only skill development and teaching, true history of what happened to Indigenous people. But then we also, a lot of who I served before coming into this role with IndigenousCC was a lot of non-Native institutions, organizations, nonprofits, social services that serve tribal communities to teach them how to from a culturally accurate perspective, how to serve tribal communities.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. I can just kind of vibe off of the energy that you guys have. I love that kind of new, you found each other. You could tell that it was something that was going to work and that was awesome. And that energy is infectious. I love that. I just keep that coming my way. I could use more of that energy. It's
I
great.
know, right? It is great. And it's nice to see how well the partnership is working, that you both have strengths and, weaknesses that are different, because I think that makes like such a solid partnership. The trick of that is finding out how to work well together. And it seems like you guys have done really great at that. But I think it seems like an awesome partnership and really exciting work that you guys are doing. So I'm really looking forward to dive in. I feel like when I was younger, I went with my church to the Sierra Service Project, which we would go to Native American reservations and help fix up houses. Probably my favorite time that we did was we went and we got to work on a Native American vet's house and like a ramp for him so that he could easily get in and out of his house. And it's a beautiful culture, at least the culture that I was able to see from that. And they were so inviting and made dinner for us. I mean, the dinner was amazing, and just a really loving, I told you earlier, I'm like all about like what was for lunch, what is for dinner. But the food was like
sharing culture
amazing.
through food is totally a thing, right?
Oh my God.
So great. And it was just so amazing that they were so welcoming to our entire youth group that was there. It was great. I went 4 years in a row, and it was always the most spiritual too, because the land is so beautiful and uncluttered with, things that take you away from that spirituality. So for me, it was like probably one of the best experiences I had as a teen, was going there every summer. And it's hot. One year I did like a roofing project, and my soles and my shoes were burnt through by the time it was done. But I mean, it was just so much fun. You're just working and learning so much about culture and other people, which is one of my favorite things to do. So thank you guys for being here, and I'm excited to share your culture with everyone and kind of how that works in like the business environment these days. So I guess to jump off, Ducey, should we ask them a little bit about like transitioning and adapting during COVID?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. I wanted to just ask like how you are all holding up, or if there's anything that in the way that you've been working that you think, some things that you found success or some things that you have found to be more difficult that you could share with our audience that would be, helpful to, other small business owners out there and people trying to get stuff done remotely.
Sure. I have so many thoughts. Like I might go overtime. Feel free to say, "Okay, time out." But, like Turquoise and I did this on my own for a really long time, trying to be an entrepreneur and being, going into a business owner and navigating the systems here locally with like, let's just say like co-working spaces or small business administration and whatnot. A lot of times for being a member of a community and working primarily with sovereign nations, oftentimes what we had to do was translate that stuff to how that would fit in our communities. Mm-hmm. So that has been a task for us of trying to figure out, okay, this is good stuff, but we're not there yet as a community in regards to maybe we don't have access to internet as much as, it would be here type of thing. So oftentimes we're always in this space of translation, right? So that's one point that I want to kind of put out there. It's very different, right?
Yeah.
Of the way of doing business. And my other thought is, having to navigate where we are now and working with tribal communities, we have to keep that in our minds about, not very many tribal communities might have access to technology like we do, or have access to internet like we do. And so I think we have really had to diversify how we do work and how we do our business on a totally different scale, I think,
Yeah, for sure.
Constantly problem solve of how we're going to offer these programs, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have really embraced social media. We have really embraced YouTube. We have really embraced podcasting, like all of those things where it has to be pre-recorded so they can get to a place where they could get access and then,
Yeah. So probably a little less emphasis on some of the live stuff that's been, getting hot recently in the past few years because of that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I think that's been one major way that we've had to adapt a lot, is being more virtual, but also like doing the recording stuff so that they always have access to it to when they are able to see it. And so that's been really great. We've had a lot of interactions actually with youth since this has been going on. And I think, I love like working with Indigenous youth. Like it is one of my true passions. And, keeping youth engaged in person is a struggle, let alone
true.
Zoom call.
Yeah.
And so we definitely, I think we've been learning as we've been going, but I think the methods that we've been using with recording, and then we've also invested in some things that really make the Zoom calls and things like that more engaging. We use Kahoot a lot. I don't know if you know Kahoot, but it's like an online platform where it's like a game. So kids can get on their phone and they can see their name up on the screen, and then it's like and it like times you. And so kids get super into it, and it's like very
that's fun. I'm into it.
Yeah. I learned it in grad school and I loved it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, kids are gonna love this.
Gamifying. That's a great. I mean, that works for adults.
Talking
it works
to
for
two
me.
gamers. I'm like, you're talking to two crazy gamers. So you have both of us.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I think I think just investing in things that really can make sure that engagement is happening, I think is really good. And like Mel was saying, we work so much in this. Pretty much what we try to do in our business is translate what these systems teach us in order to serve our communities. And that happens all the time. And when we're in education, we call it like walking in two worlds, right? Of making that translation and being able to be successful in both. And so what we try to do is alleviate that, right? So that Native communities have a higher chance at just being able to live in these systems and be successful, not having to translate so much. And so I think being virtual and having to still translate in a lot of these cases is still a difficulty, but I think we've been doing pretty good. And we've actually have adapted pretty well, I would say. But yeah,
that's fantastic.
Using these different platforms has really, really helped us a lot.
Well, I was saying that Melody had sent over the YouTube video, and I was already learning so much in the first minute of that video. It's amazing. I feel like it's such a great tool, and I'm glad to see you guys kind of making those shifts to go virtual, because I do think too, it's such an important way, even before this was happening, to really maintain and have evergreen content. This is like really exciting for me. In case you guys don't know, I'm a little bit of a social media nerd, and I saw a while ago that for me that was the future of marketing. So like things like YouTube and all that you're doing now is going to help you adapt right now, but also, in my opinion, not that anyone's paying for it, but in my opinion, it's going to last you a very long time to be able to continue bringing new people to your message and your purpose. So it's really exciting. Where can they find that video, just for anyone who wants to see your series you guys are creating? Where can they find you on YouTube?
Oh, yeah. So on YouTube, if you search, it's called REZponse, so REZponse Roundtable. So if you search that on YouTube, but for some reason, we don't come up. So this is really important. Below it'll say like, are you sure this is what you're searching for? And so click on, so click on
Shady
that, and then we're the only one that comes up under that. So
it should be easy for them to know then.
Yeah, right.
Well, we will make sure to put a link in our show notes directly to that to hopefully help you guys out a little bit there.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I feel like 2020 has been such a crazy year between adapting to COVID and really taking a bigger stance at looking at what diversity means and inclusion means. So I'm excited to talk to you guys, because you have been doing this long before this was a trend. This has been your life's purpose and your passion for your business. So, why is it important to have diversity in business? And not just from the standpoint of it's the right thing to do, but why can someone's business be stronger when there's diversity and inclusion?
For me, okay, so this is, again, you're exactly right. This is our life's purpose, right? We're revitalizing the Indigenous perspective. And I'm working directly in workforce development and kind of trying to understand relationships between, let's just say, like your leadership to your frontline staff or your supervisors to your frontline staff. Oftentimes it relies directly within the concepts of diversity, right?
Yeah.
So that means like the perspectives that each one of us comes through with, like our value systems and how we are raised and how we see things, and in problem solving and solutions and relationships and interactions and communications, all of that, right, is directly impacted by our background. So I think it's very important for diversity and inclusion to be embraced and kind of like a foundation for all things for business success, right? Because it allows different perspectives, which in turn will allow you better decision making, which in turn will allow you more innovation and creativity. So that's what, and then in the long run, right, as somebody that like oversees a business, like a CEO style or whatever, in the long run, if you invest in that foundation, then in turn, you'll have less turnover and more employee engagement and more kind of like we love this company, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, like you said, I think having those different perspectives, there's things that with my background, never would have thought of that someone else from a different background can bring to the conversation and that can really help. I worked at Apple for a while, and I don't want to hold them up as perfect at everything or anything, but there was one part I would teach the new hires, and there's one part of the coursework that would say we celebrate diversity. It was like one of their big internal value main points, and that I loved that term, that we celebrate diversity. It's not we tolerate other people, it's not we would like this. It's like celebrate and really really dig in and get to know and say how cool are these differences that we have. And that always really stood out to me, and working in a more diverse environment at that time than I had previously, I could really see how having all those points of views at the table really made us a better team. It was fantastic.
Totally. And I think, a lot of times I'm thinking through marketing headspace, but I think we're talking to so many different type of people. Everyone looking at me would think I'm white. And I get it. I look really white, especially now. I haven't been in the sun. I'm staying in most of the time. But I mean, the fact is, no one would realize I'm probably more like Heinz 57, right? And, my mom is Mexican, my dad's German, Polish, all these other things mixed in. And the thing is, too, it's not just about diversity within your actual workforce, but if your workplace is diverse, then you're going to be able to speak to more people that are your audience and possible customers or clients. So what do you guys think about that? Like, that to me is one of the things I think people miss. I've hardly ever seen an entrepreneur that says, no, I don't want more business. So like, how do you think it affects the end goal of reaching your clients and reaching the right people to make sure you have a diverse mindset?
Yeah, so I like one thing that I think, especially with our YouTube, our YouTube just came out, 2 days ago? Yesterday? 2 days ago. Is representation matters. Like that is huge with diverse populations. Like if you see yourself in these positions or you see yourself in these spaces, then you can then that is how you get there. And I think, and I think that is a big thing. And when I with our YouTube, it was kind of like this idea and like, oh, we want this representation, we want to teach people, but like, that's really what it's been doing, and so I think that's a big key thing to take away when you're diversifying, not only just in how you do things, but also the people who are in your workspaces. Because you're coming from education and really trying to, because, like education, right? We're teaching people how to best serve the populations that they want to serve. And my background being in social work and my background mostly being in like macro level social work. So it's a lot of like system level, like how do you, I work a lot with really high, like foundations and regional, organizations, and how do these things about diversity and how do like serving tribal communities, these main components of different perspectives and different worldview, like how in turn does that help you better serve not only just directly to that community, but the people that you are supporting as a higher entity, right? As a system level entity. And so I think like in every single level, it's extremely important to have that. And Mel and I were just having a conversation this morning about, education in itself, of these, what we keep talking about, like what we do in our business of translating, right? And helping not only tribal communities navigate these systems, but helping these systems help tribal communities navigate these systems. And it's true, the more people of color that you have in these spaces of instruction, in these spaces of creating curriculum, in these spaces of, bringing in these different perspectives, then the more you're going to influence people of color. Like it just makes sense, right? Because that translation piece is alleviated. So then those things are in that space. And it's the same with businesses. Like if those perspectives are in those spaces, then it's going to be only a positive outcome. And it's important. You see in our climate today, it's come to a point where it should be a priority. And if it's not happening now, then it needs to be, and it needs to be sustainable. I think that's the biggest thing too. Diversity in businesses need to be sustainable, so that you can keep pushing it in that realm.
How do you ensure it is sustainable? I think you bring up a very good point there. You got one, Melody?
Go, Melody's ready. Go, Melody, go.
Oh, take it away.
Diversity has to be the foundation of your business. That's just it. Because naturally it will impact all these other areas of work, right? So it's like your customer relations, your marketing, your all of that, right? So if diversity, like the understanding of it, what it means and how to apply it, if that's the foundation of like
so true.
how Apple does it, right? At the beginning, when you come in as an employee, right? That's the tone, like that will ensure the sustainability of it, because it's part of the way you do things, right?
You know, because a lot of what we teach in the trainings we facilitate and things like that is it's an entire process, right? And it's not just you do these things once and then that solves it, right? The consistency is key, really, when it comes down to it. So if you can continue, you learn how to incorporate these things, these perspectives in the work that you do, even on a daily, right? And then you consistently keep doing it. And then it just becomes part of the process. And so that is really important. And I think too, is we always say, because, you know, when we're in this realm of, especially we're starting to do a lot of trainings on like allyship as well, you know, even people of color trying to be allies for other marginalized groups that we don't belong to, is fear is always a barrier to change. And also fear is, like, it's scary, right? Because if like you were saying, like if you don't know these perspectives, or you don't come from this place of like knowing something other than what you've always been taught, then it's really scary to not only, like, maybe you'll make a mistake, maybe you'll say something wrong, but you literally are entering yourself into a whole new way of functioning. And so fear is a big thing. And I think, like, acknowledging that fear, like, everybody has that fear and it is totally normal in these spaces, but that's, you know, and understanding that fear is totally normal does help you move on and making more sustainable choices that will create a different workspace for businesses.
I mean, I experienced that fear just when company changes how my phone works. Much less something as foundational as this, right? As something that's really, there's a lot more socially going on here. Have you come across any ways, what are things that you've seen that have been helpful and effective in helping people kind of overcome that step? Because I can empathize with that feeling of, like, if you put yourself out there and you make a mistake, especially in public, it can be easy to kind of go, okay, why should I even bother? Like, this is, this was not a good experience. I just want to pull away from it. So I would love to just hear your perspective on kind of working through that, or anything you found to be helpful in overcoming, especially those early steps of that change.
I think the basis of all of our work is trying to, we have a whole session on this. This is Turquoise session, but it's like creating culturally safe spaces, right? So what that basically means is like having this mindset to be open-minded of, like, I accept you, right? I accept that you don't know this, or I accept that you don't know that, but I'm also willing to learn, right? So if we can come with those two things of, like, this willingness to be open-minded, this willingness to learn, we try to teach that.
I think that's awesome. So important. Clayt, our CEO, just put together a CEO Council of Racism, and it's a group of keepers that are meeting to share experiences they've had with racism and, I guess, the lack of diversity in their life. And they're sharing those stories directly with Clayt and with each other. And they're talking about, what does that mean for Keap and how can we do better? And I think that's such a great thing. We also have a diversity and inclusion group, but this is like really a personal and open environment for people to share those stories. And I think if you can lose the fear, we'll all learn a lot quicker than if we are worried about that. I experienced the fear too, because the thing that would be the worst, in my opinion, would be to ever hurt anyone's feelings about something that, to me, just wouldn't. I would never feel that in my heart. So like the fear is a true thing. You don't want to say something that is offensive on accident. And I think being open is the first step of making sure, like, you know, you're open to feedback and you're open to learning as quickly as people can. But I think you're right. That fear is like, it needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be kind of moved through in order to get true diversity and inclusion.
Yeah. And I mean, like Mel was saying, like we kind of open people's eyes to this different worldview, mainly from like an Indigenous perspective, right? But also like you can take, and that's why we're moving into this facilitation of allyship as well, is because you can take these concepts and really apply them in any space that you're at, right? So once we go through, like after opening people up to this new worldview, then we go into like skill development. So what actual skills can you utilize that maybe you have never, maybe you haven't necessarily, not that you've never done these skills before, but how can you use it in these spaces in particular? So things like, you know, having self-awareness, having a lot of self-reflection. So if something like that, like a fear, like if you do have a fear in one situation, like really having that self-awareness and self-reflection of, okay, what can I do now, or what can I do personally, right, that will help alleviate this fear right now? And so because a huge part of being an ally, right, especially in business spaces, is education and educating yourself, and not relying on people of marginalized groups to educate you is huge, you know, and that's like right there, like that will alleviate a lot of fear. And it's you know, it's getting in those places, and sometimes when you feel uncomfortable, that's when you know that you need to be open to learning, right? And so like that's a
true.
huge part of it. And so we then like move into like, how do all these things also like move into like having empathy for these populations that right? Because if you're trying to be an ally of these groups you don't belong to, like you will never know what it feels like to be part of that group. But as an ally, it's good to do whatever you can to try to feel as much as possible. And so it's huge.
Definitely.
That point of like, we, you know, can't rely on any given population to be the ones to do the education for us was something that kind of hit me recently as I saw some people talking about it, because, you know, I guess my instinct would be kind of like, whether it's throwing it out there on Twitter or having a conversation with someone, of just saying, hey, like, teach, I don't like, I want to come from a point where I'm saying, I know that I don't know what I need to know. So, hey, you teach me, but I'm asking people to do work. If it's like, hey, why I don't want to pay you, but why don't you do all the work of educating me, please? Right. So that was something that, you know, I hadn't realized before. And I realized, okay, I can kind of see where that issue is. So along those lines, I would love to hear, you know, where you would suggest somebody should start, if there are resources, like what is the place to start if, you know, I don't want to burden everybody else with doing the education that I should have, frankly, right?
Agreed.
I think I have a couple thoughts, right?
Yeah.
A couple thoughts just basically of like this entire conversation that we've been having. And I think like, I just want to emphasize the point of how Turquoise was sharing, like this process that each of us as individuals have to go along, right? We're on this pathway and this process of where we are when it comes to inclusion and diversity. I don't want to say issues, but, you know, topics or concepts or whatever. So that process is very, very much driven by emotion and by behavior. Right? So a lot of the work that we do is not only trying to teach these concepts, but also teaching that this process is behavior change. It's like anything else. Like I'm trying to go to the gym and work out. I'm trying to eat better, right? Like many decisions and these choices directly impact how this change is going to be facilitated over time, right? So I think that's like one of the biggest things I want to it's just being mindful of these behavior changes and emotions, because you are going to get an emotional response, especially if it's like something that you only know, you know. So it might be fear, it might be anger, it might be like confusion. I don't know, right?
And probably if it's anything like a diet, the beginning will be way harder than if you work through it. You know, like the beginning's always the worst. You have those emotions that flare up and like, I can't do it, or this just seems too hard, you know? So people have to push through that phase if they want to, you know, get to the part where you get to more understanding.
No, that's, and you know, because the learning curve can be really, really intense. Especially if you, and I think for people too who are now saying like, whoa, like, you know, with all the movement going on right now with Black Lives Matter and even like in our Indigenous realm of like a lot of things changing for Indigenous people as well. You know, some people, this might be the first time when they're like, whoa, like this is like still happening, right? Or this is like, and I think, so for the learning curve might be really, really intense. And so I think one of the big things that I always tell people is, like you don't want, if you want to learn about a population but then you're asking them to educate you, then you're making them responsible for your, right? Like for you pretty much. And so that's really hard, especially in this time, because, you know, they're going through a lot. And so for them to then do that is a huge, another thing to do, right? On top of this, just literally surviving in most cases. And so
totally.
So I think for us, because you're like, Crystal, you're saying you're so huge on social media. Yes, social media is such an amazing way to get educated nowadays. And I think obviously knowing like credible sources, but there is a ton of people and Native organizations, in particular, Indigenous organizations, Black-led organizations that we follow, and we really try to, you know, share the voice on our Instagram, personally, yes, and then with our IndigenousCC Instagram as well. But I think that is such an amazing way for people to be, and they say these things, right, that we want people to learn, like in meme form, right? You know,
right. This just
I'm with you. It makes it so easy reading and seeing the image. It's like, why haven't I thought of that before?
Right.
When it's I'm like, it's right in your face.
It really just simplifies it. Because I remember someone reached out to me about the whole Mount Rushmore stuff happening, and they were like, do you know what the tribe's gonna do? Like, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not sure. Like, I haven't really looked into it that much. And I said, oh, but let me send you this meme because I saw one today and it made so much sense. And it did. Like, I found it and I sent it to her and she's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that makes so much more sense. And so, it's like even things like that, you know, and I think social media is really, really huge. And so we can send you guys a list of handles that we follow on Instagram. That would be cool. Yeah, that are really, really helpful that we utilize.
Which is so funny. Okay, I will tell you, Turquoise and I are exact opposites in everything that we do. And sometimes we have like epiphany moments where like if you see me do this, we sometimes are just on the same page, because I literally wrote myself a note to mention that social media and credible sources is one thing, but follow us on social media at IndigenousCC. And
I was about to ask, normally we wait till the end of the episode, but just give it to us right now. Where do everybody who's listening, this is your way to get educated, starting with your it sounds like Instagram. What else do you tell us all of it? Give it all to us so we can go follow.
So at Instagram, it's at IndigenousCC. On Facebook, it's IndigenousCC. And then we also have LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Indigenous.
I feel like too, if you're going to start with new behaviors, it's like absolutely the laziest way to start educating yourself. So if you want to start small out there, if you've got a lot on your plate and you're like, I want to start somewhere, finding this stuff on social, it's literally in your feed. You're already on there and you can get those doses of quick inspiration to maybe start taking your education even further or find things to start digging into.
And according to behavior change, okay? starting out small is good. So even though
I agree.
Yeah.
Shout out to Pam with those TMAs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, like if you're scrolling through your Instagram and more of these things is what you're seeing, that's consistent change in your environment. So it's like you're seeing and you're seeing these things that are educating you, whether you know it or not, right? Or like
that algorithm knows your heart more than you do.
Yeah, exactly, right?
It's terrifying, but I love it.
Yeah, so I mean it's a perfect example of that. And also what I want to say is allyship is a hard, lifelong journey. It is difficult. And so Instagram is honestly a really good way to get that information in a very like subtle, like once in a while thing where you don't always feel super overwhelmed. And so,
totally.
And so that can be a start. And then of course, when you get to the point of like, oh, actually, maybe I should read this article, or maybe I should read this, or maybe I should go to this training, right? Then it's like, then you can make your own decisions on when you feel okay to learn it. Because in COVID land, overwhelmingness is all the time.
Yeah, that is true.
That is so great because, we teach the importance of follow-up and of, it takes, 7 to 14 times of making contact with someone before they ever buy, and of creating these, creating a nurture sequence that will just kind of, drip feed a little bit of information to get them to buy stuff. Well, what you're saying is make a nurture sequence for your self-improvement by following these. I love that. That's fantastic.
Me too. Okay, Ducey. Well, I just saw the time and this conversation is going so great that I feel like we could probably all talk for like 8 hours. But since we're coming up on time here, I'm going to ask one more question, and Ducey, I'm going to let you ask the last question because I want to make sure we get in like these hard hitting questions here. So this is one that's heavy on my heart, like that I think coming from you guys will be what people need to hear. But what are the risks of not being diverse and being left behind in this world that's going to more diversity? What are those risks for a small business owner, that doesn't move forward?
I'm going to explain this in like a simpler way, right? And then hopefully I could connect the dots to this like larger concept. So I'll tell you with just technology, okay? So we had to diversify into technology using, more virtual platforms. And most of the population that we work with is older, older generations that have like this fear of technology or this fear of trying to learn a new system, right? Changing the way that they're thinking, like there's that whole thing, right? But what happens with, let's just say somebody that's unwilling to change that mindset, they are going to get left behind, right? And then it's going to put them in a position where they're just, okay, now I'm by myself, right? And everyone else keeps moving. I feel like the same thing with diversity for anyone that's in this small business entrepreneur space. They continue to function in a closed-minded, they're going to be left behind, or in a space where it's just like, now I'm just here. Everybody else is just has moved on with these concepts in this thought process. But
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's the best way I could explain it.
We literally had a DM today from someone who was considering our product, and they reached out. They asked us for our CEO name. What have we done for the recent Black Lives Matter communities and BIPOC? And then they asked us our percentages of hiring. So I think, and I'm sharing that very openly, only because I'm saying it's already started. And if you're not moving that direction, you will be left behind, because people are considering where to do business based on these questions. And if you're not diverse and you're not considering them within your business and from the beginning, like you said, Melody, you will get left behind.
No, I totally agree. And like, that's not only as a business of like, how do you incorporating it in a way where, like I was saying, like it's sustainable and it's very evident, right? That this is like one of your core values. Because if you don't, like, it's moving, you can see the shift happening. And if you're not a part of the shift, then it's just, ultimately that's what's going to happen, is you're not going to be part of that shift. and I think it's also because people want to be true allies as well, right? So even someone who doesn't belong to BIPOC groups, it's like they still want to support businesses who that's one of their main true missions, because that's part
100%.
why. And so, and so it's this whole like realm of it's literally functioning differently, like, and like that's what it comes down to. And so yeah.
And then I will say for us
fantastic.
as a business, we do base like the way we think, and that like being open-minded and being like willing to like adapt. We do partner with people that think the same way that we do. We do collaborate with people.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, and even just functioning in that way of like, okay, this diversity kind of inclusion mindset, we choose to partner with people like that.
Yeah. I was proud that it was an easy answer for us, and we knew where we are and we know where we're going. And it was very much communicated through top down at Keap. So for me, it wasn't a scary question, but I just mean people's questions are changing. So Ducey, last question of the day here.
Well, I always like to try to end on, this has been all extremely positive, but to put a little hopeful note on it, I would love to hear what each of your hope for the future is, just regarding this topic. What you look out into the future, what is it that you would love to see? Well, this was a good one. Okay.
I know.
So every time I get questions like this, I think about, so I have a niece, she's 3, and then I have a younger sister that's 16, right? So I think about what future do I want to have for them when they're where I'm at.
Yeah.
So that's how I put myself into that perspective. Let me get in that role. But
I love it.
Yeah. So what I would hope for it to see is that there's more love and less hate. And I think that could be achieved through adapting this type of way of thinking, like this mindset, right? And then more safe spaces, right?
Yeah.
For us to learn. And I think we both are still on our path of learning, especially when it comes to our own culture. I'm definitely on that, like trying to learn my own culture. And I think having the safe space to do that is allowing me to thrive. Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It's hard to thrive and learn and change when you're in a place where you're, afraid, or, I mean, even, just physically, like if your life isn't in a a literally safe place, like how are you going to learn and change? And that's true socially as well. That's great.
Yeah. And I think I'm really glad Mel mentioned like her niece and her little sister, because, as Indigenous people, like since before European contact, we always think about future generations. And that's like that's one of the collectivist mindset that we function off of, is how are our decisions now impacting future generations. And so, I always say like our ancestors stayed resilient for us to be here today. So I'm going to stay resilient enough for future generations to,
oh my gosh, that just gave me chills.
But to have more opportunity, right, than I have. And I'm very privileged that I'm able to, I've moved away from home, I have an education, and I'm able to now be in a space of helping my community translate these systems that we don't belong to, right? And so I think for me, it's really just, and we see it in the youngest generation right now, like they are fearless, like they like working with these youth, like I'm like, holy cow, you have way more courage than I ever had at your age.
That's awesome.
And it is so empowering. And I think for me, it's really just seeing a future where, we can coincide in these spaces, and there's a lot more representation in these spaces. And like Mel was saying, like they're the safe spaces where we can have identity development, cultural development, and also preserve that in those spaces, so that it's not only like equal access, but also like we're changing the systems because we're a part of it. And so I think I see that in a lot of the work we do, especially with the youth, like it is going to be an amazing transformation. I just know it. So,
that's beautiful.
That's so great. Well, before we wrap up, we have our unsponsored sponsorship. This episode is brought to you by Pam Slim. I think everybody on the call knows Pam Slim, right?
We love Pam.
Yes.
So she is most noted for the fact that she was on this pod. No, wait, that's not right. She's most noted for her being the author of Escape from Cubicle nation and body of work. She has a lot of focus on helping small businesses. She's the CEO of Ghana's Consulting, and she and her husband run Main Street Learning Lab, where it's a place for incubating, highlighting entrepreneurs of color in the Mesa.
And it's the cutest place.
It's so awesome.
It is so cute.
Yeah.
We are
So
honored.
It is.
Use that space. We love it there.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's so great. So yeah, she has a long history of helping people run, start, and be successful at running their small businesses. And yeah, we love Pam. We've worked with her several times before. So this is just our shout out to a small business that we love. So,
and I would say Pam is also noted as a great mother, wife, and friend. So I know those aren't the ones that make it in the sexy and cool section, but I think Pam really prides herself in what she does. She does it for her family. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. This has been an awesome discussion. I really appreciate your time, Melody and Turquoise. Thank you so much.
Do you want to tell them one more time where they can find you guys?
Yes, please.
At your website or on your social?
Oh, me? Okay. Yeah. Our website is IndigenousCC.org. So you can keep up with all the new stuff that we're doing and stuff that we've done in the past. And then when you can contact us through our website as well, you can set up a 30-minute consultation too if you want to just chat. And then our Instagram is Indigenous.cc, and then our Facebook is IndigenousCC. And you can also find us on LinkedIn at Indigenous Community Collaborative.
Okay, and that YouTube channel was REZponse, REZponse Roundtable, REZponse, and don't let YouTube change the spelling.
That's right.
We have a YouTube channel now.
Well, good thing Ducey came in clutch there. Well, I guess we could say that's a wrap on Small Biz Buzz today. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Small Biz Buzz. Please take a second to subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star rating. It helps keep the show going. And if you need a hand with growing your small business, head over to Keap.com. That's Keap.com and get started. More business, less work. That's Keap.